My husband's deceased. There's been a tragedy at my home. He's stiff and he's been wounded. He might have had a heart attack.
An unconventional relationship ends in tragedy.
He poured himself a drink, really heavy, and then he started spewing. Didn't realize how much rage was going on in there.
Leaving behind a broken family and a wife facing serious questions.
He would often say, everything will be okay as long as I hide the steak knives. Well, oh my God, he didn't hide the steak knives.
Hey there, everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and welcome to Prime Crime. This is where we break down some of the most compelling and memorable true crime cases. Marriages at times can be pretty rocky, right? From those little tiffs to the serious arguments, that's normal. Yet the relationship in this story is quite different. It goes from a rather unique beginning to a deadly end.
911, you need police, fire, medical. I don't know. My husband's deceased. There's been a tragedy at my home.
It's around 9:30 in the morning on January 12, 2019, when 911 dispatchers receive a frantic call from a woman in Winter Park, Florida.
Why do you believe he's deceased?
Because he's stiff and he's been wounded. He might have had a heart attack. I don't know.
That's the voice of 45-year-old Danielle Redlick, who says she discovered her husband, 65-year-old Michael Redlick, dead on the floor of their home.
It was just a bizarre case. Initially, when she called 911, she said that her husband had succumbed to a heart attack.
But then she had a different story. She said that Michael stabbed himself to death. She was in fear of her life.
He was actually choking me and trying to suffocate me first. I actually went for the knife, and he was screaming, "What are you going to do, stab me?" And he grabbed it. And that's when he did it. He made a motion. He stabbed himself, and I ran into the bathroom. When I came out, I was just lying in blood.
You say he stabbed himself?
Correct, yes. I tried to hurt myself this morning. It doesn't look good for me.
In order to understand how we got here, we have to take a step back to the unusual beginning of Danielle and Michael's relationship.
I first met Mike, I think it was 1996. He'd come to the golf course and say, I think I'm in love with this woman, Kathleen, but she's dying of cancer. I think I'm gonna marry her. You're gonna marry her? Yeah, the benefits that she has are terrible. She's gonna have better treatment, better care, and that's why he married Kathleen. I'm sure they were in love, but he was all about helping her out. After Kathleen passed away, Mike was basically providing for two of Kathleen's kids, Danielle and her younger brother.
Michael Redlick was an executive for various sports teams, so he had a prominent job, doing well, making good money.
She found him somewhat exciting. You know, he was 20 years her senior, certainly had more financial resources, and it sounds like he was able to take her out and do different things with her.
Somewhere down the road, the relationship started. He married his stepdaughter. We warned him against it. Like, what are you thinking? In a weird way, it's a love story that most people wouldn't approve of, but it became a love story, a real love story. Well, that's the biggest mistake Mike made in his life.
Fast forward 15 years, Michael is dead, and Danielle is taken to the hospital to be evaluated. Police pay her a visit to try and piece together what exactly occurred here.
We just kind of want to get some type of information as to what happened. If you're willing to talk to us, that'd be good.
I'm perfectly willing to say what happened.
At the hospital, Danielle was concerned about her kids and about herself. She was worried of what would happen to her and who would tell the kids that Michael was dead.
I'm just really concerned about my kids knowing that their dad's gone. Well, who tells them this? My husband's gone.
We're just going to tell them that their father passed away and that you're in the hospital under care. No details will be given out.
Can't believe this.
What struck me was there were some times that she shed some tears, but I thought that she was rather calm and cool and collected to be in that situation.
What are people being told?
We haven't talked to anybody. We wanted to talk to you first if you're willing to talk to us.
I mean, I'm definitely willing. I'm just afraid. Should I have legal representation? Is that no one's even telling me?
That's up to you.
This may seem odd, but it's the police that are interviewing you.
So I understand you say I'm not being held, but the doctors are evaluating my...
You're not being held by the police department.
But the hospital?
Correct.
You know, it seems like a normal question, but she did ask if I was free to leave. Am I under arrest, right? So she must have known that there was some suspicion.
Yet there is much more to Michael and Danielle's relationship. Accusations and allegations.
You want me to describe what happened?
I want you to tell me whatever you feel comfortable telling me.
Thursday, my husband was very belligerent and distraught.
Well, at first the relationship was fine, but then over time there were allegations of controlling behaviors and that he had a drinking problem.
He was following me around the house and I was trying not to engage. I locked myself in the bathroom. He broke the door open. He was scaring me, so I decided to leave. And he was drinking heavily.
I'm not a rocket scientist, but wait a minute. There's 8 empty bottles of wine in the garbage. Mike didn't like wine. So those bottles got emptied by somebody other than Mike.
We had some issues last year. He basically cheated on me, and it was a big, long, drawn-out thing. And I found a slew of emails of him carrying on with another woman, and it just crushed me.
Mike was trying to understand, and he must have been going to some meetings with Al-Anon, and along the way, he met a woman. They became friends. Friends. It was somebody that he could talk to about dealing with her. No infidelity at all on Mike's part. I'm convinced of that.
He found a text from another man to me, and that really angered him.
Danielle had social media messages. It was kind of right in the middle of were these communications for a social nature or was she looking for employment? She alluded to the fact that she was looking to further her career. And it sounds like he was somewhat jealous that she also was interested in other men.
Thursday, I ended up leaving the home to avoid any kind of distress in front of the kids. My daughter, the two of them were yelling at each other, and I said, okay, that's it, we're leaving. So I took her with me to a friend's house. And my son wanted to stay. He was belligerent, but he wasn't being physically harmful to the kids.
That's where things began to go somewhat awry in the marriage. She complained that as a result, he was both physically and emotionally abusive. And unfortunately, we live in a society where domestic violence still occurs. And we're not so quick to disbelieve a woman who is smaller than her husband.
At his funeral, Danielle delivered the eulogy and told everyone in the congregation that Mike was her best friend and talked about all the things that he had done for her and the kids. No way, if you listen to that eulogy, you could ever think that this guy would lay a hand on her.
Police need to get the full story of how Michael Redlick died. Coming up, can detectives figure out what actually happened between the couple?
I did not murder my husband. Please, I don't understand. This is a tragedy. I can't believe this.
Everyone in the congregation at his funeral is looking at her delivering a eulogy, and they're all saying the same thing. Why isn't she behind bars?
It's January 2019, and 45-year-old Danielle Redlick is being questioned after calling 911, saying her stepfather turned husband, 65-year-old Michael Redlick, died in their Winter Park, Florida home. After telling dispatchers several versions of what happened, investigators talked to Danielle at the hospital, where she says Michael was aggressive and intimidating.
He continued on his day Friday to work, and I continued my day. I got some snide texts from him during the day. We attended our son's football game together that evening, and it was after the football game where, once again, he poured himself a drink, and really heavy, and it just started from there. He started spewing. I didn't realize how much rage was going on in there.
She had previously filed a police report against Michael for domestic abuse, and because of that, it led credence to her claim later that she was in fear of her life and that Michael was at it again.
But Danielle starts to shut down.
I think that's about what I'm most comfortable talking about currently.
With Danielle not giving police much to go on, days later they return to the Redlicks' home, this time with a warrant in hand.
Can you get the kids away, Dad? Please.
Yes.
Just get the kids.
Danielle, I just want to talk to you, okay? Right now you're not under arrest, but we just secured you for our safety. We do have a search warrant for your house, and I also have a search warrant for your DNA.
While the detective collects the DNA sample, Danielle seems shocked to learn what investigators may be thinking.
2 buccal swabs, saliva standards from Danielle Justine Redlick, which is believed to be evidence relevant to proving that a felony crime has been committed. Death investigation, second-degree murder are located in the person.
You're saying the saliva, when there was resuscitation done, that's second-degree murder?
No, I'm collecting saliva standards from you.
Because of the resuscitation?
Because of other evidence that we have collected.
She also said that she tried to save Michael's life, giving him CPR, and passed out because of her Herculean efforts.
She tried CPR and couldn't find her phone to call 911. I think that's somebody dancing and just changing the story as much as she could.
So you're saying that once this DNA is confirmed as mine, I'm being charged with second-degree murder? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm collecting this to be tested. From what we collected from the house, we need to be able to differentiate your DNA from your husband's DNA.
That's when Danielle starts getting defiant.
What the heck are you guys looking for? I don't understand this. Tell you what freaking happened. I don't understand. What are you looking for? Can you tell me what they're looking for? I might be able to help. Is that a no?
We also have a search warrant to collect any other evidence that we think is necessary.
I'm trying to charge me a second. I did not murder my husband. Please, I don't understand this jargon.
From what I understand, you live directly across the street from the Redlicks.
Correct.
Little did Danielle know there were others who for a long time noticed issues between her and Michael, issues that become critical in understanding the complexity of this case.
The whole neighborhood knows that they fought, verbally at least, and physically out in front of the house.
Police speak with the Redlicks' neighbors and learn even more about the tumultuous relationship.
We are very aware of the bickering and fighting and that type of thing. Most of the time it was screaming at one another, but primarily it was her screaming at him.
These are two people that were not getting along. The relationship started off in a very strange manner, and they probably should have never been together in the first place.
When you hear them fighting outside, did you ever hear the nature of what they were arguing about, or just kind of little bits and pieces?
Well, I think a couple times she'd scream, "Get out of here," and that type of thing, but not to the extent of where the issue was.
He knew she represented not only a danger to him, but to herself. And I think when you mix alcohol and anger management, she had a couple altercations with the law, so my guess is he was just trying to keep her in check.
I didn't see any altercation with hitting, but my wife has also on occasion. Her hitting him, I don't know whether he's hit her or whatever the scenario is from that standpoint.
I've seen them argue plenty of times. Has it been verbal or physical?
But it wasn't on his part.
So she's initiated it, or she's been yelling? Okay. When it's physical, what have you seen?
Her slapping him around in the face.
Some of us saw some dangers there. If you would have asked me 6 years ago, did I have any friends whose spouse were capable of killing them, I'd say only one, and that would be Danielle.
How would you describe Michael?
He always seemed very laid back. I never saw any kind of aggression or anything.
And how would you describe Danielle?
Volatile. But I don't know what happened behind closed doors.
Then detectives learn there's been run-ins with the Redlicks in the past, including the year earlier when Michael actually called 911 on Danielle.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
We need a car here. There's a woman that's a danger to herself and to others right now.
A gentleman that's a danger to us.
My sense on calling 911 was to show her that, look, I'm not going to abuse you. I'm not going to hit you, but I've had it.
You better go in your room. Please, Dan. Please, go in your room. Will you stop? Oh, all right. I will call you back. I will call you back in 5 minutes.
Sir, what is going on there? Hello?
You can see in a domestic situation where someone is looking at their wife acting crazily that they would call police, and because they didn't know what her intentions were, that they wouldn't ask police to come over right away and said he would call them back, but he never did.
This was not Danielle's first brush with the law. She actually was previously charged with getting into an altercation with a couple of deputies. She was even accused of biting one of the deputies, and she received probation.
It's still not clear, though, what truly happened in the Redlicks' home that January night when Michael died. But up next, investigators speak with someone else who maybe can provide some answers.
She was like, when Dad comes home, he's angry with me right now, so if you sense tension, I'm just warning you, me and Dad aren't on good terms right now.
We started struggling about 5 years or so ago. He started getting some medical problems and ED, nothing like a male ego. Never this. It's been a mental shock.
It's January 2019, and police set their sights on Danielle Redlick, a woman on probation, as they think she stabbed her husband, Michael Redlick, to death, all amid a heated argument in the couple's Winter Park, Florida home. Over the 15-year marriage, this relationship has been rocky for the stepdaughter-turned-wife who says Michael, 20 years her senior, physically and verbally abused her. Police need to determine if there's any truth to what Danielle is saying, so they speak with the Redlick's son, then 11-year-old Sawyer, to get a better picture of what their family life was like and what may have gone down the night Michael died.
How did you get to your friend's house yesterday?
I had a football game last night and I had a sleepover with him.
Was he supposed to coach this morning at your football? And he just didn't show up?
Yeah, no one showed up.
Mike was a Little League coach, and the night of the occurrence, there was a flag football game.
How was your parents' relationship that night?
I think there was some tension between them. I don't know what, but I could see the anger.
Who appeared angry?
My dad.
You know, if anybody was toxic in a relationship, it was Danielle. Go back and look at all the things before he came back into the house that night. What did she do to him as he was getting out of the car? She threw eggs at the car. She egged her husband. This is not a sane woman.
Have they ever gotten into arguments that you actually saw them physically fighting?
Yes, they were pushing each other.
Have you ever seen anything more than just pushing between the two of them?
Scratching.
Okay, who would scratch who?
I guess my mom and my dad would push away.
Investigators then learn even more about Michael and Danielle's troubling marriage from their daughter, 15-year-old Jaden.
My parents used to be separated. They're obviously not divorced, but as a family, we've been through a lot this past year. I know they were kind of in a heated argument this week about something.
Jaden's interview with the police was what I would expect, basically that her parents did not get along.
My dad moved out in April of last year, and he moved back in I think, late October. They've always had like an off and on relationship for like, I think the past 5 or 6 years.
It's interesting for someone so young that's getting information from both parties. Clearly the father communicated to her that he didn't necessarily get along with his mother, and the mother was communicating to her that she didn't necessarily get along with her father. So she was kind of stuck in the middle.
Last year, my dad met this woman, and my parents were separated at that time, and that was when they were saying, okay, we're gonna get a divorce. And my mom like was really hurt by that.
If you know the people close to both of them, Mike Redlick was not the kind of guy that was gonna be cheating on his wife. No way.
She had like an app on her phone, not a dating app. She showed me the app. It was for like work or something.
She had messages where some gentleman mentioned that he found her attractive and he liked her photo.
Some random guy was like flirting with her or something, but she didn't respond, and my dad saw that, and I think that's what caused like an argument. I have a really close relationship with my mom. She told me that she didn't have anything going on with this guy.
Obviously, this was a source of tension between her and her husband. At some point, she even deleted messages off of her phone. These messages certainly did not help her.
You had mentioned they had fights in the past. Has anything been physical?
At points, yeah.
Okay. When's the last time you saw them get into a physical confrontation?
Not for a while. Sometime last year.
Jaden blamed her mom for being the instigator, that if there was any violence between them, it was her mother, Danielle, who instigated it.
In the times in the past that they've had this physical confrontation that you've observed, who would be the more aggressive one to actually physically touch you?
My mom. I've never seen him hurt my mom, like physically.
It's rare for a daughter to point the finger at her mother for being the violent one, but that's what happened here.
The one time that I saw like a mark on my dad's face was because they were arguing and my mom had a ring on.
Has he ever hit her or left any marks on her?
I think so. I remember just my mom saying my dad pushed her.
Do you think the push was in self-defense because she was coming at him, or push because he was upset at her?
Maybe both.
You had a verbal and physical abuse being alleged, you had cheating being alleged, so you had all this in a combustible mix that led to the tragedy that ensued.
He said to me on several occasions, everything will be okay as long as I hide the steak knives. I was driving from Charlotte up to Cleveland, got a call from a good friend of mine that let me know what happened. They said he was found dead. I was in shock, but at the same time, I wasn't surprised. Oh my God, he didn't hide the steak knives.
Detectives put two and two together, and they begin to realize that perhaps Danielle's story that Michael stabbed himself doesn't quite add up. Maybe Danielle was the aggressor. They begin to build a case against her, starting with something police noticed at the very start of this whole investigation.
Michael was stabbed once in the shoulder. It was originally a bloody crime scene, but when investigators walked into the house, they smelled disinfectant, bleach.
It was clear that the husband had bled out. There was evidence that she even attempted to clean up. By the time they arrived, and the fact that the wounds had dried, it led the investigators to believe that this had taken place hours prior to her calling 911.
And let's go back to that 911 phone call that Danielle made after the stabbing. There was one important detail that caught investigators' attention.
Did you just find him?
No, actually, it happened last night.
Did you see him last night? Was he okay, or was...
He was not okay last night. We had altercation.
What is interesting, of course, is that she waited 11 hours to call the police after what was ultimately discovered to be an altercation between the two.
Is there a reason why you didn't call last night?
I'm on probation, and I was really afraid, and I didn't think anybody would believe me.
Her initial story was that he killed himself. Okay, so if your husband kills himself, why wouldn't you call 911 right away? Why would you tamper with evidence? Why wouldn't you call EMS and see what you could do to save him?
About a week after the stabbing, Danielle is arrested for violating her probation, and that's when police press her even further on Michael's death.
You had indicated that you're not a lawyer, but again, we want to give you the opportunity to tell your side of the story. It's up to you if you want to talk to us more.
For what, the other stuff?
Yes.
I don't even think we're living at this point. Oh my God.
But with Danielle Redlick not giving in to questioning, it's the evidence that starts doing the talking.
Detectives focus on the 11 hours where Danielle said that she was hiding in the bathroom because she was in fear of her life. Meanwhile, in those 11 hours, she was cleaning up the crime scene. Plus, she was surfing the web on a dating site, looking to meet new men while he's bleeding to death. That's the kind of stuff that makes headlines and will stick in a juror's mind to show that someone has a cold and depraved heart.
She did all types of odd behavior. But I just want to point out that it's not absolutely dispositive because we all react differently. Taking of a human life is one of the most traumatic events that one can engage in. And it's very difficult to know what normal behavior is. So it's kind of a mixed bag here.
About a month after Michael Redlick's death, Danielle is officially arrested and charged with murder and tampering with evidence.
Danielle was charged with second-degree murder, which doesn't require premeditation. It could just be that she killed someone with a depraved mind, but didn't necessarily plan it in advance.
It's then, when Danielle is locked up in jail, that she does something which raises even more suspicion.
I told you that I had the plea offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was basically they dropped the charge to manslaughter 10 years. According to, my lawyers, it was a good offer, but then today it seems like they had bad news. They're like, well, no, the plea's not. He doesn't want to negotiate the plea now, and now he wishes he didn't give it to you.
Most of us thought, this is an airtight case, and she's going to be found guilty. If anything, maybe they let her plead out to a lesser degree. That offer was on the table.
Danielle made the decision to decline the manslaughter deal, where she would have served 10 years in prison.
There's some evidence they keep getting, but it's just stuff they took out of his desk when he was writing down stuff about when I had filed for divorce. Michael was so angry, he was keeping a log of stuff like, he was just being vindictive, like, oh, today Danielle did this. And it's like, all this stuff this did to me. I better not share too much, but there's something really bad about him that he did when he was younger. They're trying to keep all of that out.
She obviously thought she could convince a jury that she believed she was in fear of her life. She could use Michael's past against him.
Then he got all these hearsay stuff from people they were talking, he was talking to at work that don't even know me. Oh, well, Danielle had problems. Meanwhile, this son of a is drinking his ass off, smacking me around, smacking the kids around too, going at it with me, Well, unfortunately, a lot of people aren't stepping forward because they didn't see anything. No one sees the abuse. I was mentally abused, like psychologically. I'm not kidding you. Sexually. I mean, he was a mastermind.
Keep in mind that even when one pleads self-defense, they are not claiming that they did not kill someone. They are merely saying, I am not criminally liable because I had to kill this person in order to save my life.
They had another stupid charge in there for tampering because there was so much blood when I was trying to, anyway, without saying a lot, I was slipping on it, so I used a towel. So they were saying, that kind of thing could be tampering. So that's kind of BS. The max for that is 5 years alone.
She was also charged with tampering when someone dies. The police have to conduct an investigation. So it's a crime to impede that investigation and tamper with a crime scene.
When you walk into a crime scene, you smell bleach, generally that's tampering with the evidence. And so that's the one that all along we knew she would be convicted of. The bigger question is, would they get her for murder?
That's the question. Would a jury believe Danielle Redlick murdered her husband?
They did a hell of a job banging up some evidence. A lot of it's hearsay. A neighbor saw me hit him on the outside one time. If I go to trial, I could definitely lose, or I could win.
When we return, Danielle Redlick heads to trial.
to put a mother and 4 kids in jail after her husband died. It's fabulous. It's really great karma for you guys. I mean, I know you're doing your job, but at the same time, I haven't had no chance for defense or anything.
In June 2022, prosecutors are set to bring Danielle Redlick's second-degree murder and tampering with evidence case before a jury for the death of her stepfather turned husband, Michael Redlick. Investigators believe Danielle stabbed him after their 15-year marriage turned to arguments and alleged abuse. Up until now, not much is clear of what actually went on in their suburban home the day of Michael's death, but it was at trial where new details came to light.
That defendant plunged a knife into the shoulder of Michael Redlick, which would cause him to bleed to death. The home that she is standing in looks like something from a horror movie.
The prosecution's strongest evidence at trial was the argument that manipulating the crime scene, hiding the crime, evidences a guilty mind.
This defendant did everything she could to avoid responsibility for her actions. The evidence will show that she engages in a significant but failed attempt to clean up the scene.
Danielle's alibi never made any sense. She only claimed self-defense after she first said that Michael had a heart attack or that Michael stabbed himself, which is really bizarre.
Based on all the information that you had from the 911 call, your conversation with Miss Redlick, did you believe her to be claiming that Mr. Redlick basically brought about his own death?
Yes.
Did the autopsy results as shared to you by the medical examiner give you reason to believe that that was not true?
Yes.
Danielle kept changing her story. How can you dispute the fact that you had someone who claimed to be a victim of domestic violence, who claimed to be acting in self-defense, who then didn't claim self-defense when she spoke to law enforcement?
Did you actually locate some evidence?
Yes, I did. There was towels that were piled up next to the stair. There was a mop that had blood on it and a bucket full of like pink liquid by the stairs. There was also knives. There was a knife in the doorway, knives in the kitchen sink.
I think the prosecution relied more on the physical evidence of her manipulation of the crime scene than anything else.
Prosecutors also tried to show evidence of problems in the marriage. An email from months before the stabbing from Danielle to Michael was particularly chilling.
I know I'm bitter at times, I admit, but you have a lot of nerve as well. Although my words may be cutting, they are only sounds, a dull knife compared to the sharp, disloyal, deceiving, phony, and never-ending, selfish knife you continue to twist in my back. Of course, someone would be messed up, traumatized, and may act out.
She used a large knife to stab Michael to death, who then slowly bled out for the next 11 hours. It looked like someone who wanted Michael dead and was trying to hide her tracks.
Then it comes time for the defense to show jurors that Danielle killed Michael in self-defense.
Everybody thought it would be a layup, but the one thing they were worried about was how people would portray Mike. If I'm the defense attorney, I'm going to paint this story about this guy that married his stepdaughter, right? We're going to make him look like a predator that was abusive.
January 11th, 2019, someone was very, very angry. This someone started to physically attack their spouse. They had rage. They were choking their spouse, smothering their spouse. That someone was Michael Redlick, and Danielle Redlick had no choice but to defend herself because she was afraid she was going to die.
The other argument for self-defense is that she stabbed Michael in the shoulder. It wasn't a kill shot that you would normally think of as an attempt to murder someone would be in the heart.
Yes, Danielle Redlick did stab Michael Redlick. Danielle Redlick knew and recognized that the danger that she was facing that night was different than the other incidents of abuse that had happened throughout their marriage.
You can see why jurors could buy the story that she acted in self-defense because she had a prior complaint of domestic violence against Michael.
At one point during the trial, Danielle Redlick takes the stand herself, telling the jury her version of events the night Michael died.
Ms. Redlick, on January 11th, 2019, did you stab your husband?
I did. Yes.
She got to take the stand in her own defense, and there was no one there to defend Michael because Michael's dead.
He was suffocating me. I couldn't breathe, and he had me pinned down. Well, I was scared, and I was just in fear for my life. I thought he snapped, and I could die.
Did you have any choice but to use a weapon to get away?
No.
She is painting a story that isn't true. She's using her manipulation to try to convince the jury that she's the victim.
I walked through the kitchen, and that's when he comes up behind me and grabs me. I just trip up on my feet and I fall to the ground. At that point, I grab the center island and I reach up to pull myself up to face him. So he grabs me here and slams me down onto the center island counter.
There were times we say, Mike, now you've never hit her when she starts going off the wall. His response was, I just put my hands up for self-defense.
He called me a and he was holding my head down on the counter. So I'm just pinned up against the counter like this, and he's straddling my body here and has me pinned. I've got a free arm here, and the drawer in front of me is the only thing I can do. So I use my free arm to push open the drawer ahead of me.
I think he was just trying to hold her back, talk her down off the ledge, and she got carried away and she killed him.
Pulled the knife out, he released my head. He says, what, are you gonna stab me? And I take the knife and I position it and face it toward him. He immediately just goes for my chin and pushes me back, and I stabbed him at that point.
Prior to stabbing him with the knife, are you able to remove yourself?
No.
Are you able to get out without using a weapon?
No, I was trying.
What are you trying to do?
To get away from him.
Why? If you don't do that, what is your belief that will happen?
That he might smother me to death.
Danielle was the best witness for the defense. She advocated for herself.
But prosecutors still needed some questions answered.
A life without Michael Redlick was a life that you were looking forward to living.
Well, a life at peace with Michael Redlick.
You wanted a life beyond Michael, correct?
Yes, at that point, yes.
If a defendant can stand up against cross-examination, I think it can really hurt the prosecution's case.
So you stood in that home with the power to call for help, and you let your husband bleed to death on that floor.
He had already bled to death. I was wondering if I could recover him or something.
Which one is it? Is he dead, or you think it's possible to save him?
Well, if he could be recovered, something would have to be done immediately. And so, yes, I thought perhaps I should do that.
So in these fleeting moments, you think Mr. Redlick can be saved, you choose not to save him.
I wouldn't put it that way, no.
When someone waits 11 hours to call 911, she was no longer in fear of her safety when he was lying on the floor bleeding to death. And yet, she let him die while she was surfing the web looking for dates.
Standing there, having mopped up all that blood, taking all these towels and soaked them through with Michael's blood, you thought that it was possible he had died of a heart attack.
Thought there was a possibility.
You did not believe that your husband had a heart attack, Ms. Redlick.
Actually, I did. I was hoping, too.
You were hoping?
Not in the morbid sense that I wanted him dead, but...
If he had a heart attack, you wouldn't have been responsible for his death.
Yes. To an extent.
Juries, I think, are rather sophisticated, and I think that she really helped herself by getting on the stand because it provided her with an opportunity to tell her story and to talk about the tumultuous relationship and to explain why she took all the actions that she did.
My understanding is that you have reached a verdict. Is that correct? Yes.
Once the case was finally handed over to the jury, it took them just 4 hours of deliberating to come back with a major decision.
Verdict as to count 1,
We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty. Verdict as to count 2. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of tampering with physical evidence.
I was sad. In my opinion, justice wasn't served, and I couldn't believe she got away with it.
You have to respect jury decisions. These are 12 men and women that give up their time to do their civic duty, and I'm not in the habit of questioning a jury's decision. It's a very interesting decision. It's very interesting that all these things can occur and someone can clean up a crime scene after killing another person and be acquitted of murder. It's not something that we see often at all.
Danielle Redlick dodges a conviction of second-degree murder, but is sentenced to almost a year in jail for tampering with evidence with credit for time served.
The jury decided not necessarily she was innocent, but the jury decided that they didn't have enough evidence that she was a murderer beyond any reasonable doubt. So in the end, she bet on herself and she won.
Mike made one mistake. Wasn't being a good father, wasn't being a good husband, wasn't being good to Danielle's mother. He married his stepdaughter. Should have never have done it. If we could go back in time and talk him out of it, I wish we had that opportunity.
With her jail sentence completed, Danielle Redlick is released from custody on 12 months probation.
My focus is trying to be there for the kids. What would Mike want me to do? He'd want me to, help take care of his kids. Just thinking back of how much pride he had in both of them. He'd be bragging about the kids got an arm or how well Jaden was doing in school. I'm very proud of his kids. And it was just getting to know him before he ever met Danielle. He would come to our house. And the way he treated my kids, my kids thought the world of him.
There's still a little bit more to this story. So Danielle's daughter, Jaden, absolutely ripped into her mother in a letter to the court, saying she wants nothing to do with Danielle. She wrote, quote, "You may all be fooled by the incredible mask this woman presents to you all, but I am not." And Jaden even asked for a no contact order for her and her brother Sawyer, but it appears that wasn't successful. Look, the truth is, the jury, they believed Danielle Redlick's story, yes. But what's left in the wake of this whole case is unfortunately a broken family. That's all we have for you here on this episode of Prime Crime, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and as always, stay safe.